Welcome back, hidden threat to the comfortable. It's strange how life exposes people without anyone having to say a word. Sometimes the truth shows up on its own, and that's what just happened to you. For a long time, you played a role that made everyone around you comfortable. You wore a mask that helped you fit into the world they expected you to live in. You kept things calm, predictable, easy to understand. But something inside you changed. It wasn't dramatic. It wasn't planned. It was just a moment where everything that you had been holding back finally came through. The act fell apart in the middle of everything, and the real you stepped forward, unfiltered and unedited. Suddenly, people saw a version of you they never expected, and now they don't know how to react. They're stunned, confused, even scared, because the person they thought they understood wasn't you at all. Delangens, for years, they assumed you would stay quiet, agreeable, and easy to manage. They built their expectations around the idea that you would always stay in the background and keep the peace. But when that inner shift happened, you stopped shrinking yourself for their comfort. You stopped watering yourself down. You walked out of the version of yourself that they created in their minds, and you finally stood in your own truth. And the moment you did, everything around you changed. The atmosphere shifted. Conversations became tense. The energy in the room got heavier because people weren't dealing with the safe version of you anymore. Now they were dealing with someone who doesn't need approval, someone who isn't afraid to be real, someone who refuses to follow rules that were never meant for them in the first place. That kind of authenticity makes people nervous, especially those who depend on controlling how others see the world. Lengda, right now the people around you aren't just surprised, they're recalibrating. They're going back through every moment you shared with them and trying to make sense of it all. They're wondering who you really were when you laughed, when you stayed silent, when you let them believe you were less than what you actually are. They're realizing that the person they thought they knew was just a mask you wore to survive, to keep the peace, to avoid unnecessary battles. The real you, the one who watches, learns, grows, and evolves quietly, has always been there. You just reached a point where hiding no longer felt natural. The buildup of holding back your truth finally reached its limit. And when you stopped pretending, the energy you released revealed a side of you that is deeper, stronger, and far more powerful than anything they were prepared to see. And what they won't say out loud is that your transformation threatens their stability. It disrupts the roles they assign to you. You're operating on a higher level now, moving with confidence and clarity that they can't imitate or replicate. Your words carry more weight than before. Your silence makes them uneasy. Even the way you look at situations now feels sharper and more certain. You're not trying to dominate anyone, and you're not trying to prove anything. You're simply existing without bending yourself into shapes that make other people comfortable. That pure, unapologetic authenticity is something they can't control, and that scares them more than anything. They realize now that their assumptions were never strong enough to contain who you truly are. In a single moment, you rewrote the unspoken script they were all following. You changed the rules without trying to. You showed that the structure they relied on, the one where everyone stays in their designated role, was built on fragile ground. And now that your true self is out in the open, there's no going back. The mask is gone. The act is over. And the real you is finally taking up the space you were always meant to claim. Now that your true self has stepped forward, the people around you are scrambling. They're trying to figure out how to put you back into the version of you they're used to, the version that made sense to them, the version they could control. They're whispering about you in private, sending messages in group chats, having quiet conversations behind closed doors. When they think you're not listening, they're talking about you constantly, trying to understand what changed. They don't say it directly to your face, but they're shocked, they're confused. They're asking each other, did you notice that? Why are they acting like this? What happened to them? Something is different. Should we be worried? They're treating your growth like some kind of problem, like an emergency that needs to be solved, because your transformation highlights everything they've been avoiding within themselves. Your courage exposes their fear. Your honesty makes their pretending obvious. Your evolution makes it impossible for them to ignore their own lack of change. They don't want to admit it, but what you did shook them deeply. When you removed your mask, you didn't just free yourself. You revealed the truth about everyone else. You helped them see their own roles, their own patterns, their own false selves. And they don't like the reflection looking back at them. They're upset that you're no longer playing along. They're upset that you chose truth over comfort. They're upset that you did what they've been too afraid to do. And instead of acknowledging that, they're trying to label your growth as a decline. They call it a breakdown. They say you're acting strange. They say something must be wrong. They're trying to convince themselves that the real you is a problem. Because if they admit that your authenticity is healthy, then they have to face the fact that their own pretending is not. They want you to believe you're off, or unstable, or changing for the worse, because if you believe that, maybe you'll shrink back down. Maybe you'll apologize. Maybe you'll go back to being predictable and easy to manage. Lean, but deep down, you know the truth. You're not going back. You can't go back. Once you've experienced what it feels like to live without constantly adjusting yourself to fit into other people's expectations, the old version of you feels too small to return to. The moment the weight of pretending lifted, you tasted real freedom. And once a person experiences that kind of freedom, the cage they lived in before becomes impossible to tolerate. The old walls fell apart, the mask broke, the truth came out. And now the people around you are just going to have to learn to deal with the unfiltered version of you, no matter what they say, no matter how they try to reinterpret your growth, no matter how uncomfortable your authenticity makes them. Blind. Here's the part they'll never say out loud. Your freedom makes you dangerous. No, not dangerous in a harmful or violent way, but dangerous to everything that kept them comfortable. You are a threat to their illusions, to their unspoken rules, to the identity they created based on control and approval. You've shown that it's possible to survive without the mask. You've shown that it's possible to thrive without becoming what others expect. Your presence creates a silent question in their minds, a question they don't want to answer. If they can be honest, why can't I? If they can live freely, what's stopping me? That's the real reason they're rattled. Your transformation invites them to confront their own lives, their own choices, their own fears, and that terrifies them. They're hoping you'll fail. They're hoping your authenticity leads you into loneliness or regret so they can say, see, that's what happens when you stop playing the game. They need your freedom to look like a mistake so they can feel safe staying exactly where they are. But that's not what's happening at all. You're not falling apart. You're rising. You're not isolated. You're intentional. You're not breaking. You're breaking free. And that truth is turning their entire world upside down. They built their identity on fitting in, on being accepted, on being agreeable. They traded their power for comfort. They gave up their authenticity to avoid rocking the boat. They made peace with living a smaller life until they saw you choose something different. Gander. Now for the first time, they're questioning everything. They're wondering if the approval they chased was worth the cost. They're wondering if the safety they cling to is actually limiting them. They're wondering if maybe, just maybe, the life they've built isn't as fulfilling as they pretended it was. That doubt is what scares them most. Not you, not your change, not your strength, but the possibility that they might have to follow your example. The possibility that your courage might wake something in them. The possibility that they might see their own mask for what it truly is. A prison disguised as comfort. What's happening now is that the people around you are starting to feel something they've never really allowed themselves to feel before. Doubt. Not just doubt about you, but doubt about their own lives, their own choices, and their own comfort. For the first time, they're questioning whether the comfort they built their identity around was ever real, or if it was just a disguise to help them cope. They're wondering who they actually are underneath all the roles they've been playing for years. You didn't just remove your own mask. You accidentally revealed the truth that everyone else is still wearing theirs. And they can feel it. They can feel the pressure they've been ignoring, the weight of pretending, the exhaustion that comes from never being fully honest. They're frustrated with you, not because you harmed them, but because your freedom reminds them of everything they're afraid to face within themselves. What makes this even more intense is the way they're trying to pull you back into the old version of yourself. They're using guilt, concern, pity, worry, every emotional tactic they've learned to keep people compliant. They say things like, "I'm worried about you," or "you're not the same," or "we liked the old you." But when you translate those words into their real meaning, it becomes obvious. What they're really saying is, go back to being predictable. Put the mask back on. Stop making us uncomfortable. Stop showing us what real freedom looks like because it makes us feel trapped. Stop being honest because it highlights how much we're still pretending. Stop setting boundaries because it exposes how often we cross them. Their concern isn't about your well-being. It's about their comfort. They're afraid of the disruption you're creating in their carefully structured world. They're afraid of the questions you're inspiring in their own minds. And most of all, they're afraid that if you succeed at being authentic, they'll lose the excuses they've been hiding behind for years. Blame this moment, right now, is the real test. Not a test of whether you can keep up the old performance, but a test of whether you can hold on to your freedom when people try to pressure you back into a role you've outgrown. They will push, they will poke, they will pull at your emotions. They will try love, anger, guilt, and confusion. They will claim you've hurt them. They will say you've disappointed them. They will accuse you of changing for the worse. They may even gather other people to agree with them, trying to create a wave of pressure strong enough to make you give in. Most people would break at this stage. Most people hear the criticism, feel the tension, and go back to performing. But you're not that person anymore. You've already seen behind the curtain. You've already felt the power of being yourself. You've already experienced what it feels like to breathe freely without constantly adjusting yourself for other people's comfort. Lend. Once you've tasted that kind of freedom, there is no going back. You can't unlearn it. You can't pretend you didn't see it. You can't return to the cage once you realize the door was never locked. So they can keep trying. They can guilt you all they want. They can shame you all they want. They can show concern or anger or fear. None of it will work now because the mask they're begging you to put back on has no place in your life anymore. They believe the mask kept you safe, but the truth is, the mask was the very thing making you vulnerable. It forced you to rely on their approval. It made you hide your truth. It made you bend yourself into shapes that were never natural. Your strength now comes from being exactly who you are. When you're honest, manipulation doesn't work. When you're clear about who you are, guilt doesn't stick. When you're grounded in your own truth, no one can convince you to be something else. That's why nothing they throw at you affects you the way it used to. They're using every emotional trick they know, but it all falls flat. Not because you're being defensive, not because you're fighting them, but because you're simply standing in your truth. And truth doesn't need to argue. Truth doesn't need to justify itself. Truth doesn't need to explain. It just stands. And when truth stands strong, every attempt to distort it collapses. Watch how their tactics start to shift. First came the concern. When that didn't work, frustration follows. They may start calling you selfish, accusing you of being arrogant, or acting like you're better than everyone. And none of those accusations are actually about you. They're projecting their own insecurity and discomfort onto your growth. They call you selfish because you finally put your needs first. They call you arrogant because your confidence reveals their self-doubt. They say you think you're better than them because your evolution shows them how much they've stayed the same. Splenda. Once you see this, their words lose all power. They can label your freedom as a problem. They can call your authenticity aggressive. They can act as if your boundaries are cruelty. But none of it touches you anymore because you're no longer living for their approval. You're writing your own story now, and they no longer get to be the editors. What truly terrifies them isn't that you changed. It's that you changed without asking for permission. You evolved without checking in. You broke free without waiting for their blessing. Their whole social structure is based on unspoken agreements. Everyone stays in their lane. Everyone plays their part. Nobody breaks character without group approval. But your transformation shows that the entire system only works if people keep agreeing to it. You proved that anyone can choose to stop playing along at any time. You know? And that realization has hit them harder than anything else. Now they're looking at each other, asking silent questions they never dared to ask before. If you could take off your mask, could they take off theirs? If you could choose truth over approval, could they do the same? If you could break free and thrive, what's stopping them from doing it too? You've become the spark they can't extinguish, the doubt they can't silence, the possibility they can't unsee. And because of that, they resent you, not for hurting them, but for revealing that they've been hurting themselves all along. Langer, you didn't lose people because you hurt them. You lost them because you finally chose yourself. That single act of taking your power back shook their world more than any argument or rebellion ever could. Something in the balance shifted. You stopped needing their approval, and suddenly they started wanting yours. You stopped trying to fit into their expectations, and now they're trying to understand you. Everything has reversed. They can feel it in the way the energy changes when you enter a room, in the way people start listening when you speak, and in the silence that makes them wonder what's going through your mind. You're not trying to be intimidating or dominant. You're just being yourself, and that real version of you is stronger, clearer, and more grounded than the version that used to hide behind a mask. Real power doesn't have to announce itself. It's simply felt. And whether they admit it or not, they feel it now. They may resist it or resent it, but deep down they respect it too. Because you did something they never had the courage to do. You broke out of the role that kept you small. Your mask didn't gently fall off. It shattered. It came apart so completely that there's no way to ever put it back together. There is no return to the old, comfortable illusion. You can't unlearn what you now know about yourself. You crossed a threshold. stepping into the version of you that had been waiting beneath the surface, the version you were once too afraid to embody. And now that you've arrived, everything around you is shifting. Your relationships are changing because you value depth over quantity. Your conversations are changing because you care more about meaning than pleasing people. Your boundaries are changing because you choose self-respect over keeping the peace. Your entire life is rearranging itself around this new inner strength. And yes, it's messy. People fall away. Old situations collapse. Familiar structures dissolve. But underneath all that chaos, something beautiful is forming. Space, clarity, freedom, and a calm that comes from finally liking who you are. Not from trying to make everyone else like you. And from here, your only job is to keep walking. Keep showing up as the real you. Don't shrink just because others feel uncomfortable. Let them talk, let them guess, let them try to figure out what changed. Let them beg for the old version of you to return. But keep moving forward, keep growing, keep evolving into the person you were always meant to be, not the person they needed you to be for their comfort. The truth is out now. People can see who you really are, and you're not going back to pretending. The performance is finished, the mask is gone. The real you is permanent. They can adjust, accept it, or step aside. Either way, you are free, and that freedom is worth more than all the approval you used to chase. Now, everything. They aren't just noticing you, they're observing you like you're something they can't quite define or control anymore. They replay old conversations, trying to pinpoint when the shift happened, when they stopped having power over how you saw yourself. And the part that unsettles them most is that you're not trying to impress anyone. You're not forcing respect or demanding attention. Yet you receive all of it anyway. Real authenticity pulls people in without effort. You move differently now, not with pride, but with certainty. You speak differently, not with anger, but with honesty. You exist differently, not apologizing, but simply taking up the space that was always yours. They thought the mask you wore was your real identity. They thought the role you played was the full story. But now they see that the mask was the cage. The cage you kept yourself in just to make others comfortable. The real you is something they were never prepared for. So let them whisper and wonder. Let them try to make sense of your transformation. While they're busy dissecting the past, you're building a life they'll wish they had been brave enough to build for themselves. Your truth is out in the open, and it's the most freeing moment you've ever experienced.